And we are back, and I don't even know how to begin an appropriate intro for
Me
this
either.
amazing soul. I'm going to try not to cry on the podcast, but welcome, Dr. Toya. Can I just call you Toya for this hour, for this 40 minutes?
Please call me Toya. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much, Kenya.
Oh my gosh. So one of the reason I invited Toya to come in this space, it's funny, we usually interview our guests, ask about their lives, how they're navigating life after 40, all the things.
Yeah.
But as I've mentioned in this season 2 of the podcast, I'm wanting to bring more spirituality, more healers in the space because I just feel I would be doing a disservice to really the gifts that I'm trying to put out there without talking about spirituality.
Yeah.
And I brought in a coach, a spiritual coach. She's Mija Bradford, came last month, but this
Mm.
month, and she was fantastic. And we did unpack a little bit of Mija's journey personally as a spiritualist and just the things she's had to navigate. But today with Toya, we're going to get into just talking about spirituality and how what
Oh,
she does with it. Yes, what you do with it. And I'm so excited. So, this is how I would like this is going to roll a little different than we usually. Those who listen to the podcast every week, this is going to roll a little different than I usually do with guests. But before we get into this topic that I'm so passionate about, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself, share a little more about what it is you do and what, if you can, in a brief, I know this probably won't be brief, but in a brief way, what has led you
yeah.
for you to be in this space spiritually? So
Okay. I'll try. Do my best. I'll maybe a little help from you because as I said before, it's very difficult for me to talk about myself. But thank you for the opportunity.
mm,
Okay. My name is Toya Guzman. Afefe is my name. I am also a priest of Oya, Orisha Oya. We can talk about that later if it's appropriate. Um, so, what do I do with regards to spirituality? Some people may know me as a therapist because my educational background is in psychology. My doctoral degree is in divinity. So, my master's psychology and the bachelor's is community health education. So, and I got a
okay.
whole bunch of a whole bunch of other little things in between there. But so my journey has not been linear though. Um, as I went through, so let me start with this. I've always been a medium. I've always
Mm,
been a medium,
mm,
meaning
mm.
someone who has the ability to speak to spirits, someone who has the ability to tap into other people's energies and ancestors and things of that nature, and have communication with them and then assist them from that space. So that was something that as early as like 5 years old, I can remember
Wow.
having,
Wow.
the realization that there was something different about me in that way. Um, and luckily, I had a grandmother who was also a medium and had those
Mm,
spiritual gifts, and she recognized those gifts in me very early, and she cultivated them in me very early.
mm,
So, uh, so from a very personal standpoint, spirituality has always been the lead for me.
mm.
Um, but then academically, and because also I wanted to be different, I didn't want to be the strange person who hears stuff and shadows and said, all of that. I said, okay,
Yeah.
let me lean a little bit more on the academic side of things. So I think that all of the degrees and everything like that was really an attempt to make sense and make
Mm.
linear um, the the need to help people, the to make use of the spiritual gifts that I already had in a way that served me and served other people and paid the bills and things like that.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah, so my journey kind of just elevated from there. But then after I got into therapy and things like that, I started to realize that I was leading more with the spiritual leg of things
Mm-hmm.
than the academic thing, So it was like, am I giving a reading or am I giving you therapy? I don't know. It's a mashup.
Yes. Can I say something to that point? That was what, so, and I was gonna wait, but I'm so excited. Because I want to share with people how I met you. And what you just said is what made me say, oh, like literally, I was like, oh. So I'm very transparent. Everyone knows if you follow my podcast, I'm divorced at this point, but I met Toya when I was in the height of I don't know what, just chaos with my family. It
Yeah.
wasn't only marriage, but it was family too with my children as well. And to that point, so I got so desperate. I was like, it was like, I don't know, it was like 4 in the morning, 3. I don't know what time it was. And I just Googled Black family therapists because I was like, I need somebody to not just help me, not just help my marriage, but help my whole family. And Toya's
Yeah.
face came up first. Her practice came up first. And I was like, well, she's Black. I don't even really care at this point. I'm just going to type instead because I really wanted a Black. I
Yeah.
felt like I needed somebody who could really, really relate to me, my family as Black people. And
Yeah.
so you responded. We ended up making the appointment. We ended up all coming in as a family. And to your point, the first session was very typical of a consultation. You may not even remember this, but it was typical of like, what a therapeutic consultation is like. I had never done a
Mm.
family therapy consultation, but it's what I kind of expected. And, in the more traditional space. And at the end, the very last thing you said, we were sitting around, you were like, so who's the oldest soul? Who's been here the most? And I was like, did she just say oldest soul? Did she just say like past life like stuff? And I remember I got so it was like God, ancestors said, because I was like, I met somebody who's gonna talk in this language that I have felt my whole life, but I've never been able to meet anybody who could also give it language without me prompting them or asking them to. And you
Mm.
just said it. And I was
Yeah.
like, thank God. And I remember you said it ended up being my oldest son. And I knew it because it was him. It was the conflict we were having going on with him. He
Mhm.
was the initiate. He was the fire starter to get us to get real with what was going on in the
Oh
family.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah. For sure.
so to your point, you leaning into that. So had you not said that, I mean, I wouldn't have said we wouldn't have gone, but my level of trust at that point became huge. It was like, okay,
Yeah.
she gets this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. And what's so funny, I remember the first time you called me, I was asleep. I was taking a nap, and I never take naps during the day, but I was asleep. And as I was waking up, Spirit spoke to me and said, the next person who calls you, your phone is about to ring. And the next person who calls you, you need to help her. Because I wasn't taking clients like that at the time. I was
that's
kind of
so
like still
funny.
figuring out some other stuff. And I answered, and
Yeah.
then I sat up, and then the phone rang. And I was like, oh, okay, Spirit. And it was you. I was like, well, come on. And the rest is history.
The rest is
And that's how it
history.
goes.
The rest is history. Oh my gosh. So, one more leg to your professional background, because I want people to put in
Yes,
context as we continue this next part of our conversation, where you
yes,
mentioned being a priest at this point, a priest of Oya. How did you
yes.
decide to go in that direction? What was the thing that kind of
Oh
led
my
there?
God.
And then we'll start talking more about
Okay.
spirituality.
So one of
Yes.
the things I have learned, especially being 40 up, 40, age 40 and up, is how to go with the flow or how to allow spirit to guide me and take me,
Mm.
especially in areas when I don't know, I don't have the answer, and not having the ego, like no, because it's an ego thing. It's like
Mm.
okay, stuff is happening, and I don't know what the hell is going on, but I don't want to say that because there's so
Yeah.
many other people who need to see me as being competent or who need to see, they need to be able to trust what I'm saying. So for me to be able
Mm.
to say I don't know what the hell's going on, it's like, what? You know? So to answer your question, my husband is what's called a
Mm.
Babalawo, which is a high priest of Ifa in the Yoruba tradition of
Mhm.
Ifa and Orisha. And I didn't know what that was, and I didn't care what that was. So what happened is that my sister, and she's okay with me sharing this, my sister had a breakdown. She had a dark night of the soul
mm,
to the point where I had to have her admitted and
mm,
everything. It was like legit.
mhm.
And of course, with family, it's very difficult for families to hear things from their own family members. So I'm a therapist here, and I'm telling her all of these things, but it's like I'm your sister, so you can't get it the way it don't hit the same way.
Right,
And I
right.
was okay with her, for finding someone who could speak to her in a language that she could hear and receive. So
Mm,
she started to search, and she went online and she typed in um, spiritual reading,
mm.
and Victor Guzman came up. And my only answer is that the ancestors tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Yo, don't click that," because there's no other reason why, because
Wow.
he's a Mexican man, and so it wasn't like she was looking for a brother, or a sister. She just went and she was like, "Okay, well, shit, if it helps,
Right,
okay,
right.
it's perfect."
Right, right.
So
Right.
she clicked and she went, and when I tell you, it was like she came back from her reading with him, and her face looked different. She looked different.
Oh,
She looked
wow.
present. I was like, who
Wow.
was this person? Just walked in because I was, she was running me crazy at that point. I was like, well, who are you? And she came in and she said, I'm not even going to try to explain to you what what I just experienced. I want you to experience
Mm,
it for yourself.
mm,
Now, I have a rule. I don't let other people read me. I
mm.
just don't.
Yeah,
I have my
yeah,
personal reasons as to why, but
yeah,
I don't.
yeah, yeah.
But I made the exception this time, and she said, "Listen, I'll pay for it. Just go. I just want you to have this
Wow.
experience." And she said, "I'm gonna tell you something when you come back, but I'm not gonna tell you now." I'm like, so anyway, she paid for it, and I needed to get out of the house. It just whatever. So I went. I showed up. I'm like this. Now what you gonna tell me? Like seriously, what are you gonna tell me about a
Yeah.
what? About what? You know. And when I tell you this man read my life, and I'm not talking about the things that's Googleable,
Yeah,
it just
yeah.
makes sense. But he tapped in. I'm sorry, Ifa, because
Mm,
he's a messenger,
mm,
to the
mhm,
sacred ancestral bloodline is what he tapped into. And for the
mm,
first time in my life, for the first time in my life, I was able to go deeper and further with
mm,
my own spirituality, to talk to the ancestors from the 7 African tribes and to find out
mm.
the purpose. Why am I here? Why am I so different
Right,
from everybody else? Where did that come from? And those
right.
soul answers came in that reading. And I'm like,
Mm.
ooh, you the real deal, and you fine. What? Like, hold on, you got two things going on at the same time.
Ah, I love it. I love it. I love
And
it. I
we
love
started
it.
dating, and we fell in love, and everything
I love
happened from
it.
there. And then a part of that, though, what was revealed is that I am a daughter of Oya, which is an Orisha or guardian angel. In the Yoruba tribe, they have different what's called Orishas that walk with each person. And
Mm,
when you ever become a priest of your Orisha, whenever you become a priest, you become a priest of your Orisha, unless you become a
okay.
Babalawo. So
Right.
mine is Oya. My sister's is Oshun, whatever.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah. And so it was revealed that the next level of spirituality for me is in being a priest of Oya.
Wow. Wow. And this is where you are. Well,
Here I am.
here you are. And it's been really everything you just, obviously you put things in context because I'm sitting, I mean, you and I have a connection. And so I knew parts of
Yeah,
that. But putting that all together in perspective of where you were at in your own spiritual development and,
yeah.
understanding, like, wait a minute, I need to go deeper. And so to those listening, I really want to encourage you if you're like, well, I already know kind of what I am spiritually and, my religion. I don't necessarily need to tap more into this. I ask that you just pause for a moment because my thought is as long as you have breath, you are
Yeah.
on a spiritual journey. There is a
Okay.
deeper
Very much.
thing that you're being called to investigate, explore, share, so forth.
Yeah.
So if you had to
Mm.
define spirituality, because I think right now we're, after COVID and the way things are moving, I think people
Yeah,
are beginning to say, like,
yeah.
huh. Um, what do you think what is spirituality? How do you define it? And what is different from it from religion? Because people will say, "Oh, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual," or "I'm not really into that
Yeah.
woo spiritual, I'm a Christian." What is there a
Mm.
difference, or how would you define that?
For me, it is a difference. There is a difference. And let me preface all of this by saying I never speak in absolute, never. Because I feel like the journey is different for everyone and it's specific for everyone. And we can go into that deeper if
Mm,
you like. But so
mm,
let me just say that for me, spirituality is the journey of the
mm,
soul. And I do believe that the human experience is broken up into pieces up in parts.
mm,
And if you're doing it right, you should die several times
mm,
within your lifetime. You should die
mm,
several times.
mm,
And every time that you die, you're reborn. And if you're growing,
mm,
and I call that cyclical process
mm,
spirituality.
mm.
If you're paying attention, it's intentional though, you know.
Mhm, mhm,
So for
mhm,
me, spirituality is the intentional paying attention to the cycle of your life and being a participant in it, doing it on purpose, being willing to start over, being willing
mm,
to say you're wrong, being willing to grow, and those things. So it for
mm,
me, it doesn't matter what you identify with as far as maybe Buddhism or Christianity or whatever. I don't care. But if your
mhm,
soul on a growth, because this is what we came here for, the human experience is the consciousness
mm,
coming into this space for the purpose of experience and growth, you know. Some
mm.
people stumble
Yes.
through it their whole life and never really, um, do it in this lifetime. They'll get another one, just not this one again. Um,
Right,
you know,
right.
just not this one. They'll get another one, but not this one. And then some people are blessed enough to pay attention this time and then
Mm,
participate in a way that helps them to grow on a soul level, in which I call spirituality.
mm. Okay, so I've never heard anybody explain spirituality that way, and I love that. I love that you added the element of the cycle and the death and the rebirth. And
Yeah,
that's really how you look at the journey as opposed to, because I think we typically look at journey as more linear or like
yes,
squiggle
very much.
squaggle, but not a death and then rebirth. But having
Yeah,
constant cycles of that is very, very powerful because I think that's the death part, which, death, the way that we term it in our society, has had such a negative and scary space. Rightfully, it's a loss, right? So there's, it constitutes, a strong emotion. But this idea of rebirth, and that's what the death is for.
yeah. That's the whole purpose. Even if we're
Exactly.
talking about physical
Hmm.
death, like it's not. There is no end. There is no end to it. It's a reason why we can sit here and speak to spirit and say your father's saying this or your auntie is saying this or your mama saying this or whatever, because that soul, that consciousness never dies. There is no end to it. To
Mm,
to the consciousness. Now the cycles are ongoing.
mhm,
And by the way, Oya is the Orisha of ancestors, of death, of change and transformation.
mm,
That is all of the things that my head Orisha embodies. So for the past year, I have been getting very familiar with death,
mm,
and
mhm.
I've had some very personal experiences with death
Yeah,
this
yeah.
year, and then also the actual intentional spiritual
Right.
stuff that we do in initiation to help you to understand the cycles of life. You know,
Mm. Well,
yeah,
speaking of cycles, because this gives us
yeah,
a good way to get into our 40s.
yes.
So when you say cycle, is there a specific amount of time that you think an average cycle is? Like if someone's like, "Well, I die every year," or is it
Right. Yes. Right. So let me say this. I think that every day is a new cycle in some way, form, or fashion. And I think that
Mhm,
there are cycles and
mhm,
macro cycles. Okay. So, we have every year, we have our birthday, we come through, we have our New Year's resolutions. Those are
mhm,
like micro cycles,
mhm,
and you get a little bit of reflection, hopefully. You do a little bit of reflection to see how far you've come and where you are. You do some comparison, blah, 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 blah. But
mhm,
then we have the macro cycles, like age 40.
mm,
It's the reason why almost every religion on the planet resonates with the number 40.
mm,
It's the reason we have 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. We have 40 days on the mountaintop. We got Jesus fasting for 40 days. We got Muhammad with the 40 days of seclusion. We got Hinduism with the 40 days. It's all over the place. And it's
mm,
like, okay, well, what do they know? They
mhm,
know that the human experience has a rhythm to it, has a vibration to it. And whether you were tapped into it or not, whether you were, aware of it or not, something's happening.
mm,
And on a larger scale, when the soul enters that 40th year of life, there's a there's a pause that happens.
mm,
Now,
mhm,
again, some people just fly right through it and just, don't see it. But for those who are paying attention, there's a pause and reflection that happens. It doesn't have to necessarily be on purpose either. Sometimes the pause is like hitting a brick wall. Sometimes it's an aha
mm,
moment. Sometimes it's a
mhm,
body
mhm.
change. Sometimes it's a realization that you're not doing this shit no more. You've done that. You've been there, done
Right,
that.
right,
No,
right.
seriously though, because when you hit 40, you start your tolerance for certain things becomes a little less, and it's not even most times it's just that you wake up one day and you're like, fuck this,
Right,
something different.
right,
Your
right,
tolerance is different, there's
right.
a reason for that because your soul has accumulated enough data or life experience for
Mhm,
you to say, I know I this is familiar. Whoa, wait,
mm,
I got enough data on the back end now that this is familiar, and the soul acknowledges it, right?
mm, mhm,
And
mhm.
anytime you are aware of something, you immediately start to manifest within it, good or bad,
Mm.
good or bad,
Yes.
good or bad. Your attention to a thing is what gives it life because you lock into it. And
Mm,
at age 40, that attention process is a little bit different, right? Because you have a little bit more data. And then from that data, you can sift through it and start making some choices on your own, so conscious choices. When you're 19, you're still reaction. You're still reacting because you've never
yeah,
seen this before. You know what I'm
right,
saying? The
right.
soul isn't familiar with whatever this thing is. There's no data from it, there's no experience from it. But when you're 40, the soul says, wait a minute. I saw this shit when I was 20, you know. Hold
Right.
on, you know. And then a decision is made. Now, because we are free will beings,
Mhm,
what
mhm.
you do with that information is on you, whether or not you decide to move forward in full knowledge that this is not the best thing for you because you have the experience from the past, or if you decide to say, you know what, I don't know what to do, but I know I'm not going to do what I did before, which is
Yeah.
also a choice.
Mhm, mhm.
So, to answer your question, for me, the number 40 or the age 40 represents a stage in life to where you start to get some stability. Even the number 4 in numerology is a
Yeah,
number of stability. You
yeah.
think of a square with 4 foundation. That's
Mm,
4.
mhm,
And then
mhm,
0, which is the all encompassing number. Everything is within 0. Nothing can begin or end without the number 0.
mm,
Okay, so when you put those
mhm,
two numbers together, when you hit 40, there's some stability, there's some planting for the good or the bad,
mm,
for
mhm. They're good
whatever,
about it.
wherever you, for the good or the bad, because some folks don't get it, but it starts at that point. And for me, 40, when I hit 40, I started to feel um less impulsive, maybe. I don't know.
Mhm,
Like something calmed down a little bit. It calmed down just a little bit. And
mhm,
I had enough data and life experience for me to make some different choices in life and start to put myself at the forefront of the decisions that I made. Whereas before I was so reactionary, I
yeah.
wasn't putting me there. So, you just become more present.
Ah, that was so good. No, it was so, and I loved how you talked about the number 4 and 40, and because all of this is all so connected. And I think we've been acculturated or conditioned to think that things are random or that
Mm-hmm.
coincidence or this is over
Yeah.
here, this is over there. And, I hope that by listening to, what you just said, that people understand how these dots, they really do connect, not
Yeah.
directly, and not maybe the way that we anticipate them to, but our life is happening on purpose. Like there are things happening now. How we respond to it,
I love that.
like you said,
Yeah.
it's up to us. But because
Yeah.
that's the whole point of having this opportunity of being a human. But
Ah, yeah.
because it is an
Mhm.
opportunity. I mean, I feel
It's an
like being
opportunity.
it's opportunity. It's
Yeah.
not a death sentence. And we've made it seem
Yeah.
so horrible and that we're gonna wait until we get through this horrible human existence before we can have joy. I mean, that's my opinion. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts?
I, I feel the exact same way, and I literally was just saying this to a group of people last night. Like, this is an opportunity. Life, do you know that there are souls lined up in the ethers? Like, please tap me in. Let me get in. Come on. It's like, help me. Let me get in first. And it's
Yeah.
like, and we waste so much time surviving,
Yes.
we in survival mode, and it really robs us of the experience that we waited to get here to have. You know what I'm saying? And that's what a lot of ancestors are screaming at their lineage, like, this, and don't waste this opportunity to live. Be here,
Yes.
be present, get in there. And when you do that, you really boost your whole bloodline up. You know, in
Yeah.
both ways, from everybody behind you that's coming and everybody before you that lived before, they get a boost when you
Mm,
live and when you acknowledge who you are and you live in that vibration, because there's an etherical cord. Look it up.
mm.
There's an etherical cord that is attached on the spiritual realm to our ancestors that connects us, but also to the ones who will be born through our bloodline and lineage. So just
Mm,
like when a baby is in the mother's womb and the mother eats and the nutrients go through that cord to that baby and it feeds them, it's vibrant, it grows. It goes both ways when it comes to the ancestors and when it also comes to the ones who will come through your bloodline as well. It's all reverberating down. Yeah.
mm. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh. I mean, we're gonna talk in a minute how people, if they want to connect more to you, but I'm like, y- I've
Yeah.
known you for 300 years and I've not heard you break it down like this. So this is really we usually talk about my problems. So, but this is really, really helpful. So let's sit in the space of, we were talking about this as an opportunity as a human to be here and to live, and these connections, how we're, lifting up the whole ancestral line. So we're also in a very peculiar state in humanity. I think it's a
Yeah.
fascinating state, and I'm very excited because we're finally tapping into some truths that, have been avoided for whatever reason. But for that person is like, okay, I don't really see that. I don't really feel like I feel parts of that some days, but what are some things, I guess, spiritually, or how can a person begin to tap into the joy of this? Is there practices, anything that you would recommend to that person?
To a person who doesn't naturally feel the spiritual pull
Yeah.
to dive deeper,
Yeah.
what can they do to get it? I would say just pay attention.
Mm.
Pay attention because everybody has a language that resonates best with them. You know, even when we talk about things like the clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, da, 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 right?
Mhm.
That's just evidence that everybody has their way of perceiving spirituality,
Mm.
what we're calling spirituality. And it's
Mm.
not the same for everybody. That's why I do not bash people or judge people when they say, I ain't feeling it. Okay, all right. Because what I know is that you are a soul having a human experience. And whether you feeling it or not, this is the essence of who you are. Now,
Mm.
how that awareness, presents itself to each person, that's up to them. But the number one thing that a person could do is just start to pay attention. Pay attention to themselves and pay attention to the world around them. Also, we perceive things from our beliefs. And
Mhm.
so if we are
Yes.
if our belief system is at a negative, glass half full, the world is a horrible place, blah blah blah, because we are constantly manifesting. We are creators. God created us in His image or her image,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know. And what is God? God is love, and God is creation, creator. You know.
Mm.
So whether we are actively participating in the creation process or passively creating, it doesn't matter. You still are what you think, are what you see, are what you perceive.
Mm. Mhm.
So I just say, if we take the spirituality side of it off of it, just work on your mind. Work on your
Yeah.
mind. Because at the end of the day, the mind is so personal.
Mm.
Nobody else is in that brain of yours experiencing heaven or hell, which is here.
Mm.
No one else has to bear the crosses that you have to bear. So if you want to take the spirituality and the religion stuff off of it, be my guest. But
Mm.
here, get this temple in right. And I promise if
Mm.
you get this right, you'll have this spiritual experience, whether that's what you want to call it or not. We don't have to call it that. We can call it Mardi Gras. Well, I don't care. You know what I'm saying? Just as long as you're good. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Well, I'm so glad that you brought in then mindset and how you're thinking, because that was going to be my follow-up question is
Yeah.
people, I think, are beginning to pay attention. I think in the conversations that I have, they're paying attention, but then there's this immense fear of what they find when they start paying attention. And then
Yeah.
there's this immense um the fear leads to then not being able to trust what they see. And I don't
Right.
know if you have thoughts about, what do you do with that
Yeah.
fear? What do you do when you're having a really hard time trusting what you know about
hmm
yourself or about the truth? Any tips?
So the first thing I would say is before you have no one has to, excuse me. It would be a great idea to be to have your own back. Have your own back.
Mhm.
What I mean by that is everybody in this world are going to have some form of resistance or
Mhm.
disbelief to what's presented externally. So if you tell somebody, you know what, I don't know how to say this, but I feel like you need to be careful while you're going out today. Something in my gut is telling me
Mhm.
that you need to be careful. Now, okay, we can take that two ways. We can say, girl, you crazy. Like, you tripping. Or you can say, okay, it might be some truth to that. I take that, and if it's nothing, it's nothing, and that'll make you crazy for feeling that because it didn't manifest, because it could be
Mm,
in the person's auric field, and just
mm-hmm.
because it didn't manifest doesn't mean that it wasn't there.
Right.
Um, and you honor yourself. You consistently honor yourself and honor what you feel and have your own back, because
Mm,
you can never gain the confidence enough to hone in. So people always ask me, how do I know the difference between an ancestor or a spirit speaking to me and my own thoughts,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say, because ever since I was 5 years old, my grandmother made me make a distinction.
Mm.
Is this you or is this a spirit? And it's like, okay, like I'm 5 years old. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. How am I supposed to know? Okay, well, what were you doing before you heard this message? I was playing with my Barbie dolls, and what was Barbie playing? She was trying to get with Ken. They was trying to hook up, and it was like blah blah blah, you know. And but the message that just came to you had something to do with something totally different, unrelated to that. Okay, that was not you. That was spirit. And then
Yeah.
I started
Yeah.
to, but see, here's the other thing I want people to understand. You have to get extremely familiar with yourself.
Mm.
All
Yes.
of the ancients, every ancient, I don't care, Socrates, all these old folks from back in the day, the first thing they said is know thyself. Know thyself. Because if you don't know yourself, then you'll be up in the air and you won't trust the things that come to you. You won't trust the
Mm.
intuitive leads. You won't trust because you don't know yourself well enough to know what's your voice and what's someone else. Just know
Mm.
your own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second saying that all the ancients from back in the day said is, to thy own self be true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So once you know who you are, be true to yourself. And once you start to get that intimate relationship with yourself, then you listen to the verbiage of this. You will be able to trust yourself.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? You
Yes.
will be able to trust yourself.
Yes.
And it doesn't happen before that. You have to get a relationship with yourself so that you can trust yourself.
Mm. This is so good because, each time I'm like, oh, but what about this? And I'm looking at the clock and I cannot believe we're about to hit 40 minutes and that's just not
I'm so
possible. So
sorry. I talked
no,
too much.
you're
Oh,
doing awesome. What are you saying? No, 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 you're doing awesome. What you just said with that, and this, I cannot implore people enough. This is where the stillness comes, where you're willing to create more still
Mhm.
moments to get to know yourself. And I hear it all the time, especially I hear it a lot amongst Black women. And that may just be because that's more of my social group. But just like, well, I don't have time to sit still. Or if I get too still, then I'll think of all this stuff. Like then too much will
Yeah,
come up. And so I need to just kind of stay busy so that I will do what it is I said I was going to do. And it always makes my skin just because it's like you're feeding into the self that's not even real. Like you're feeding into this conditioned space that is quite contrary probably to your truth. So now you're not creating the space to stop, to hear yourself. So now you're doing the things that don't have anything to do necessarily with your truth. And
yeah,
it's a weird cycle. So hearing you say that, and I think that's where then the fear and stuff, to your point, comes because I don't know which way to go because I haven't really sat to take the time to really understand my truth, understand who I am, and trust that that is absolutely not only enough, but that's the thing that's going to actually carry me beyond and with abundance and so
yeah,
forth. So that
yeah. Uh-huh.
was really
Absolutely.
powerful.
And I just think
Yes.
first of all, avoidance is not the answer. Avoidance is not the solution. And then people say they don't want to deal with what comes up. It's there. How
Mm,
can it wouldn't have it comes up from where? From in you, because it's there. You know what I'm saying? And it's coming out and up anyway. In,
Mm,
in your relationships and your job and your ability to show up, and it's there anyway.
there
So
anyway.
I tell people, do you want to be a victim of it and not have it? There's not, it's happening to you, or do you want to get in control of this and by paying attention to this and deciding I'm doing this for me so that I can live,
Mm,
so that I can be happy because this is it.
this is
This
it.
is it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, I'm going to do a little bit of a storytelling to kind of show how Toya, how she helped me really do this, because I was the runner, guys. I was like, oh no, I know there's a lot of shit going on. Can't deal with that. Got to go forward with this. And so I want to just kind of state this, and then I'll let you, if there's a way for people to connect
Yeah.
to your community, to receive support, I'll let you share that. But I'll say this: when we were doing the whole therapy, we're doing the family therapy, I was a mess, and you did this, and again, you're being in your role, and I know that you're working, and you're connecting, but you're also working, so you may not remember all of this stuff. But there was
Yeah.
one particular day that I walked into. You had said this session, you're like, Kenya, I'm going to pull just you for a minute, because we have these sessions, it would be the whole family. So I was like, okay. And so you sat me down, and you turned on your computer, and you pulled up one of my music videos. And you were just like, I just love this video. This looks amazing. You look amazing. Like, look at this video. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's Hollywood. That's entertainment. That's my Sasha
Uh-huh.
Fierce, whatever.
Yeah.
And you were just all happy and like, oh, this is so beautiful. And then when it finished, you were like, so I don't see any part of that that woman in these sessions that we've been having. Where is
Mhm.
she?
Mhm.
Where is she at?
Mhm.
And I'm like, she's not real. Like, she's, I don't, she's entertainment. She's,
Mhm.
and you challenged me on that so badly. And then you really, you had a really honest moment with me and was like, are you passionate about your life? Are you passionate about your
Mhm.
marriage? Are you passionate? And I'm like, passionate. I mean, why do I need to be that? Like, I hadn't even, that word, just, I left that for entertainment. Like, that's for that
Yeah.
other space. And it wasn't,
Mm.
you really challenged,
Mm.
yeah, you really challenged me to say, no, this is who you are. Like, this is you. And yes, you're an artist, but
Yeah.
that is you. And it took a lot. I bring all of this up because I would not be in this podcast space right now. I've none of this. I wouldn't be doing
Yeah.
the astrology, wouldn't be doing any of this had I
Yeah.
not had support. And you gave me when I was really like, I know I can't be married anymore. I know I can't do
Yeah.
this anymore. I know. And you never said go get a divorce or go get, you never, that's not the role of someone, a good therapist. Nobody should be telling you what to do. Um, you
Right.
just said that, you need to be choosing you though. And I couldn't, I needed that. I needed to hear that. I needed the space to process that. And I'm not saying this to say for women who think they should get a divorce, go get a divorce. But what it
Right.
showed me, what it showed me was what was my truth. And this goes back to what you were
Mm.
just saying. What is my truth? And I knew that my truth was not to be in that space. And it was less about,
Mhm.
oh, this is a bad person or this is a whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, were there, we were having concerns and issues, but this was not a bad person. This was not the
Right.
situation I was supposed to be in that was going to
Correct.
allow him or allow our children to have the lives that they
Right.
actually really needed to have, whether they're aware of it or not. And
Yeah.
support, I mean, I could not have done that, and there was a lot of other spiritual things that happened in between. Lots that's part 12 when we come
Right.
back together. That did a long time to get there. But how can people, if they wanted, I know as you mentioned, you are now a priest of Oya.
Yeah.
You're in a different space, in your life and professionally. But is there a community? Is there a space that people could come to you if they wanted to get support?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my husband and I, we have a temple. So if anyone wanted to learn more about the Yoruba, Ifa or Risha tradition, I don't even call it a religion, tradition,
Mm,
lifestyle.
mhm, mhm,
We do have an online space. It's a spiritualexperience.com,
mm,
all one word. And we go in there, we teach about the Orishas, we teach about the ancestors, we teach about how to honor them in the traditional way, of the Yoruban way, but also the way that our ancestors, as they came over from Africa, how they did it, and it was
mm,
the indigenous way, is what I would say. So we have that space, and also on that space, we have conversations like this, spiritual
mm,
conversations where we can put it into practical application. It's
mhm.
I can rattle off all kind of facts and ancient stuff, but what difference does it make if it doesn't apply to my life right now?
Right,
So
right.
we have those things, we have those conversations. My husband does readings. He does a reading every month,
Mm,
and that talks about the energy that's vibrating with
mm.
the people. And it's so funny because you know how they say birds of a feather flock together? Well, that flock has a vibration or an energy the reason why they flock together is because they're all on the same vibration.
Mhm,
And we have a way through divining to tap into the vibration of the flock and see what's the
mm,
energy that everybody is on right now. And when I tell
mhm,
you, it is so on point and it's amazing. And we get that every month. So we take that information and then we help you to apply it to your own personal life, you know,
mm,
and we move forward. It's all about spiritual growth and then also community. Other
mm.
people who are also looking to grow and change and do their thing.
I
So
and I'm like, "Why haven't I joined yet? What's wrong with me?" So, okay, so, at the point by the time people hear this, I will be a member because I've said, I was like, "I need to join. I need to," and then, life, "Oh, I gotta come back and do that." Thank you for that is so special, Toya. That is such
yeah,
a
thank
a
you.
special, what you and, Victor are doing. I mean, that's huge. And, you know, my goal in the work that I do is just to continue to spread the word on these things, but to also create safe spaces because that to me is, you know, as I'm doing more of the astrology readings, which never had crossed my mind that I would be in this space
Oh my God. Well, it crossed
until I
my
listened.
mind.
Of course it did. 'Cause
Mhm.
it wasn't until I listened and so when you talked about death and rebirth, for me,
Yeah,
my cycle of music had its own kind of death to a certain degree. I'm not doing that right now because I needed the rebirth. I knew I was being led to do something more spiritual. I knew that, and I just was having a difficult time really gathering what that would look like. And then the astrology just started. I can't even point. I mean, I've always been into astrology, so it's kind of difficult for me to ascertain what was the line because I practiced it for myself a long time.
yeah,
I just had never really
yeah.
gone public with it. But
Mhm.
I just think that we'll definitely have in our show notes a spiritualexperience.com, correct? Correct? That's
Yes,
the
yes,
yes,
yes.
yes.
And then the other thing, is that starting in November, I'll be having like fireside chats here at my home. And if people would like
Oh,
to come, if you're in Chicago and would like to come and just kind of have these conversations, have these spiritual conversations, and also I'll be doing like ancestral readings
I
and
love it.
things like that as a group, and we can tap in. And if there's messages that come, let them come, things like
Yeah.
that. So to find out more information about that, that's at gotbaba.org.
Say
G O
that one more
T
time.
B A.
Dio. Say that one
Yeah,
more time.
gotbaba.org. GOTBABA.org.
I love that. Got Baba.
Mm-hmm.
Gotbaba.org. We will we will include that. And we're at our time, but
I
listen,
know.
I'm gonna have to like make you a contributing guest or something because there's so much that you've said that needs even further unpacking. And so, I decided to make this interview, the video to be also public because listening is good and I'm actually an audio learner, so that's why I love podcasts so much. But I do think,
Yeah.
YouTube has the ability to cross even more people just because of my following and, more, even a bigger audience. So I'm happy to put this up. I want people to sit with what you're, yes, yes, sit with what Toya has said today. Really sit with it. And think about, it's not a time to go fix your life. It's not about
Mhm.
fixing your life. It's just about being in your life, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the revelations will come. So as we wrap up, what is maybe one last thing that you would like to offer that maybe we didn't tap into, we didn't have time, and you want to share, or just something that you just are feeling right now, maybe people need to hear as we begin to wrap
Yeah.
up?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for asking that because Spirit was saying that someone who is going to watch this recording is suffering with anxiety, or maybe a few, but like
Mm,
panic disorder anxiety almost. And I
mm,
want whoever that this resonates with to know a few things. First, um, there is no disaster. There is
mm,
no disaster. I know it feels like a disaster, but there is no disaster. But
oh,
what is happening is that your bells are going off because you are a very, 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 very powerful person, and you are not walking through this world with no armor. You have a alarm system that's for you, that is screaming at you that it's time
mm,
for change.
mm,
And if you could just allow yourself to sit with the concept before you even do anything, just sit with the concept of change and ask yourself, what would change look like in your life? Like, if things were to just drastically change for the better, what would that look like? And whatever answer you come back with, there's no wrong answer. Know that that is what's screaming at you.
mm,
That's the anxiety that you feel here. That's the panic that you feel here. You feel that change trying to get your attention so that it can be born and birthed through you. So
mm,
trust yourself a little bit more. Know that there is no disaster. It's just change calling for you.
mm, mm. There is no disaster. That was my mic drop, because I think for anxiety, that is the point. It's a disaster.
Yeah, yeah,
Something
it is.
horrible.
It feels that way. Yeah.
Yes, and it's like there is no disaster. I love that. I love that. I love you. I thank you so much. Mwah, mwah, mwah. It's a love fest. I really thank you. I
Yeah.
thank you personally. I try to say that as much as I possibly can, because I talk about you incessantly. If you're in my life, you have heard the name Toya. You have heard that name,
Thank
because it's
you.
to the point where my children are like, "How's Toya?" It's like, yes, with they you right before we push record, you got to see my youngest son, who you haven't seen in a
Yeah.
long time, and he's a grown man now. Like, it's
Deep,
just
deep voice and everything. Wow. Yeah.
so. At any rate, so thank you so much. I'm gonna have you hold tight. Those of
Yeah.
you who are
Okay.
listening, we will be back again next week with more information, interviews, all the goods. We're going to continue our series. I'm going to be bringing in other people who have a very interesting, I think, approach into healing and spirituality, which I think is critical. That you just broke down 40, why this is critical
Uh-huh.
at this point. And those of you who are not
Yeah.
40 yet, you see what you have to look forward to. And those who are past 50, past 60, this still resonates in that same space. There's even more cycles and shifts that are happening at that point. But thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Bye bye.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.